You know, um, the ultimate challenge for any independent creator today, like whether you are a filmmaker pouring years of your life into a feature or a musician spending, I don't know, thousands of hours perfecting an album.
Right. The creation phase is brutal.
Yeah, but making the art itself is really only half the battle. Because once that final cut is rendered, once the master track is bounced, you face the real mountain to climb.
Distribution.
Exactly. How do you get people to actually see or hear it when you don't have a massive multi-million-dollar studio marketing budget behind you?
Well, I mean, the digital age promised us total democratization, didn't it? We were told that because anyone could publish anything, the best work would naturally rise to the top.
That was the dream, yeah.
But the reality of distribution has become a total nightmare of obscurity. Simply uploading your work to a monolithic server does not mean you have an audience. It just means your work exists as a data point in a sea of, like, billions of other data points, completely invisible to the people who would actually love it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it's essentially like throwing the most elaborate, beautiful, perfectly planned party in the world.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. You set up all the decorations, hire an incredible caterer, curate an amazing playlist, and then you just leave the front door open and forget to send out the invitations.
Just waiting in the dark.
Exactly. You're just sitting in an empty room hoping people magically wander in off the street. That visibility problem is exactly what we are exploring today. For this deep dive, we've compiled a stack of platform architecture notes, content libraries, and mission statements from a platform called VersusMedia.
Yeah, and their entire infrastructure is built around acting as that ultimate invitation system for indie artists.
Which is such a massive undertaking.
It is, and they
Yeah.
describe themselves fundamentally as the ultimate fans of independent artists. But to understand how they are successfully broadcasting and amplifying these creators today, we really have to trace their methodology backward.
Backward how?
Well, it's crucial to understand that Versus Media isn't a shiny new tech startup throwing venture capital at some buzzy creator economy trend. They have deep historical roots in the indie community, which completely changes the DNA of how their platform operates.
I have to stop you right there, though, because looking at the notes, their origins go all the way back to 2001. I genuinely struggle to wrap my head around that.
It's wild to think about.
It makes no sense. Dial-up connections were barely loading text pages in 2001, let alone streaming video. Like, if someone picked up the house phone, you lost your connection. YouTube didn't exist. Social media didn't exist.
It was the dark ages of the internet.
Exactly. So how could a media broadcasting network possibly have roots in an era before we even had the bandwidth to support video?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the year 2001 is the skeleton key to understanding their entire model. Because they started in an era completely devoid of modern video hosting, their initial focus could not be on distribution. It had to be on collaboration. They were building a digital bridge. They connected grassroots independent musicians who desperately needed soundtracks with independent filmmakers who needed original music.
So they were building a human network before they built a broadcast network.
Precisely. And when you build a community based on mutual utility, creators actively relying on each other to get their projects across the finish line, you build an incredibly resilient, high-trust network.
Because everyone has skin in the game.
Exactly. The people in that ecosystem are deeply invested in each other's success. So instead of an empty Dropbox where people dump files and beg for clicks, Versus Media created a foundation of community and mutual support.
Which is fascinating because by the time social media algorithms started dictating everyone's tastes and isolating creators, Versus Media had already figured out how to build a loyal, interconnected audience entirely through grassroots community building.
They were way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they essentially bypassed the algorithm by realizing that an audience built on genuine creative connection is bulletproof.
And that leads to a natural evolution. When you have spent years facilitating these incredible collaborations, the next logical hurdle is figuring out how to showcase the finished product.
Right, you have to actually show the work.
Exactly. How do you take this hyper-engaged community and feed them content today without making them scroll endlessly through a void? You have to build a dedicated viewing architecture.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the way this platform is structured today to solve that problem is brilliant. The platform hosts over 800 independent films and music videos from all over the world. But it's how they serve this massive library to the viewer that makes it work.
Yeah, the dual approach.
Right. They feature traditional on-demand content, but they mash it up alongside two specific 24/7 live FAST channels. And just as a reminder, FAST stands for Free Ad-Supported Streaming TV. So they run one dedicated 24/7 live film and music channel and a separate 24/7 live music videos channel.
The synthesis of these two distinct viewing models is an incredibly strategic piece of engineering for audience growth.
How so?
Well, we have to look at the psychology of the modern viewer to understand why. The video on demand side serves the intentional viewer. That is a highly targeted action.
Think about how you watch TV on a Friday night, right?
Hmm.
You usually know exactly what you want. You want to sit down and focus on a specific indie feature film, so you search for it, you click play, and you are locked in.
Right, that's intentional.
But on a Tuesday afternoon while you're answering emails, or a lazy Sunday morning, you don't want to make choices. You just want something playing. You become a passive viewer. That's the holy grail they are capturing with the fast channels.
The passive viewer is the engine of organic discovery. We call it the stumble upon moment.
I love that phrase.
Right. A viewer tunes into the live channel looking for background ambiance, or perhaps they stick around after a scheduled video finishes.
No.
Without having to actively search, the friction of choice is completely removed. They are suddenly exposed to a genre or an artist they never would have typed into a search bar.
And if you're listening to this, you probably associate fast channels with pure background noise, like endless reruns of old 90s sitcoms playing at the dentist's office.
Exactly, just white noise.
But VersusMedia is hijacking that format for indie premieres. To make the live broadcast side even more functional, they feature a dedicated guide or schedule.
So as a viewer, you know exactly when a certain video is going to play, just like classic network television. It creates appointment viewing.
But there is a massive vulnerability in running a 24/7 live broadcast channel.
Which is?
Well, if the platform only serves a hyper-specific, narrow niche, say, only acoustic soak music videos or only sci-fi shorts, the audience will inevitably experience fatigue and tune out.
They get bored.
Exactly. A continuous live feed requires a massive cross-pollinated variety of art to remain dynamic. It has to simulate the experience of walking through a sprawling, year-round global film and music festival. I was looking through their guide, and the whiplash is actually incredible, in a good way. It forces you out of your algorithmic bubble. For instance, in their short films category, you'll see an intense indie horror short, like When the Demon Takes Hold playing, and then a little later you'll get a French short, like Fred Coin's La Route.
Such a stark contrast.
Totally. They have a piece from Richie Houghton called Crowd Control to Lose Control, right alongside dramatic shorts like Real Hot Girls and Tobin Gone.
Yeah.
They even run specific anthology episodes, like My Horror Story Season 1, Episode 2, which is subtitled I Had to Know.
It creates a constant sense of unpredictability. And they weave documentaries into that same broadcast ecosystem. You might stumble upon the drifting rhythms of Simeon Lenoir or an investigative piece like Airbrushed Beyond Recognition.
Then you flip over to their dedicated live music videos channel, and the variety there is just as wild. You have emerging indie artists like Mark Powell with Undomesticated Me, Annie Bosco's Godwinks, TTG, OAE, Dropping PSA, and Jim Stannard's Too Much Fun.
It's a huge mix.
Yeah, but then, mixed right into the schedule with these grassroots artists, you'll see a completely recognizable mainstream name, like Vanessa Carlton, with her music video for Animal.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism behind that specific programming strategy. Placing Vanessa Carlton in the exact same continuous broadcast feed as an indie horror short or an emerging country artist like Annie Bosco, it creates a powerful cross-pollination effect.
It reminds me of the layout of a massive shopping mall. It's the anchor store effect.
Ah, that's a brilliant way to put it.
You put a huge recognizable department store at the end of the mall. In this case, Vanessa Carlton is the anchor store. A viewer tunes in specifically for her. But to get there, or while they hang around afterward, they provide foot traffic for all the smaller boutique indie stores along the way.
That is a perfect analogy. The viewer's initial interest in the familiar acts as a gateway drug to the unfamiliar. The platform leverages the built-in audience of the established artist to organically cultivate an audience for the emerging artist.
It just flows naturally.
Right. Someone tuning in for Vanessa Carlton leaves as a new fan of TTG OOEE. The traditional social media algorithm isolates audiences into silos, but VersusMedia's live broadcast model forcibly breaks those silos down.
They treat independent media with the broadcast respect, usually reserved for massive studio properties. And that includes full feature films. They are programming titles that might otherwise get completely buried on a mega platform. Films like Makehurts, The Master Plan, The Wasters, and A Good Alibi.
Real substantial projects.
Yeah, they even run genre compilations like Trash Art's Killers Volume 2. Putting a feature film on a live broadcast schedule with a dedicated guide demands the viewer's attention in a way that an endless scroll just doesn't.
It creates an event. But there is one specific category in their library that I think reveals the most about their underlying philosophy regarding audience growth. Alongside the films and music videos, they program episodic content.
Yes, I saw entries like right here, right now. Episode 10, which was a deep dive into cannabis.
While those thematic episodes add variety, the series that truly stands out is their recurring show simply called The Making of. They actively broadcast the behind-the-scenes realities of these independent productions.
Which honestly kind of confused me at first. Like, why dedicate precious broadcast time to the behind the scenes? If the goal is to show off the polished, final product, isn't showing the messy process a distraction?
It's the opposite of a distraction. It is an empathy engine. Think back to their origins in 2001. They started as a community of creators collaborating. By broadcasting the making of, they invite the viewer into that intimate circle.
Oh, I see.
They're showing the late nights, the maxed out credit cards, the technical failures, and the profound passion that goes into independent art.
That makes so much sense. When you watch an episode like that and you see the director practically in tears trying to get a shot before the sun goes down, you are no longer just a passive consumer of their media. You feel deeply invested in their survival.
Exactly.
When their actual feature film finally airs on the channel, you aren't just watching a movie. You are celebrating a victory with them.
You transition from a casual viewer into a patron of the arts. That is the critical difference. This deliberate structuring of the library, pairing the intentional view with the passive fast channels, mixing the anchor store artists with the emerging talent, and balancing the polished final films with the making of reality, it proves that this platform is an active engine engineered for creator growth.
So what does this all mean for the creator? It brings all of this architecture together into their explicit, stated mission for the artists. They promise to provide dedicated artist services that are specifically designed to help emerging filmmakers and musicians amplify their reach, elevate their work, and get their media in front of, and this is a direct quote from their material, the right viewers.
This raises an important question about the modern metrics of success. We have been entirely brainwashed by social media to believe that audience growth is purely a numbers game.
Whoa, completely.
We think 1 million views is the ultimate goal, regardless of where those views come from.
But think about what a view actually is on a platform like TikTok or Instagram. It's a 3-second pause while someone is mindlessly swiping on the toilet.
Sad but true.
Right. Half the time, those views are generated by automated bots. Even if a real human watches it, they forget your name the moment they swipe up. It's empty vanity metrics. It looks amazing on a dashboard, but it doesn't sustain a human being. It doesn't translate into ticket sales or vinyl purchases or crowdfunding for your next feature film.
1 million passive, algorithmic views mean absolutely nothing to the career longevity of an independent artist. That is why the phrase, the right viewers, is so vital. A platform populated exclusively by fans of independent art fundamentally rewrites the equation.
It's the difference between standing in the middle of a crowded, noisy, chaotic sports stadium, shouting your poetry to people who are just there to eat hot dogs, versus walking onto the stage of a dedicated, intimate theater where every single person in the seats bought a ticket specifically to hear you speak.
That's exactly it. The viewers on VersusMedia's FAST channels have actively sought out an independent broadcasting network. They want to support emerging art. When you put your film or music video in front of that specific demographic, the conversion rate from a casual viewer to a lifelong dedicated fan is exponentially higher.
Yet the platform acts as an active advocate for the work, rather than an indifferent algorithm optimizing for ad revenue.
Precisely.
So to wrap this all up for you listening today, whether you are a creator who has poured your soul into a project and is desperately looking for a respectful home for your work, or you are an audience member exhausted by the same repetitive mainstream algorithms, we've unpacked a pretty incredible alternative.
It really is unique.
VersusMedia has managed to survive and evolve since 2001 by staying true to a grassroots foundation of collaboration. They built a massive library of over 800 independent projects, and they serve it up through a brilliant dual-engine ecosystem. You get the intentional discovery of video on demand mashed up perfectly with the stumble-upon magic of 24/7 live fast channels. They're taking the burden of sending out the party invitations entirely off the artist's shoulders.
It is a remarkable blueprint for sustainable artistic growth. And, it leaves us with a rather provocative implication about the future of media consumption. We've spent this entire time talking about human curation and grassroots art, but look at the horizon.
Oh boy.
We are currently entering an era where generative AI can spit out a passable synthetic movie or song in seconds. The mega platforms are already being flooded with this algorithmic sludge.
It's terrifying. You won't be able to tell what's real and what's a server farm generating content to keep you scrolling.
Exactly. So as the mainstream internet becomes increasingly synthetic and automated, human-curated platforms like VersusMedia might cease to be just an alternative for independent artists. They might very well become the last trusted sanctuaries for authentic human-made art.
Wow, that's a heavy thought.
If you want to know that the film you are watching actually required blood, sweat, and late nights to create, you will have to seek out the grassroots networks that have been championing that humanity since 2001.
It really makes you wonder. The algorithm might be able to generate the art, but it can never generate the empathy behind it. And maybe that empathy is the only invitation we ever really needed.